Just after playing a game, I decided to divorce Henry. During the game, when he blurted out that he liked to lie on a pregnant belly and listen to the baby's sound, the whole place fell silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on me. There was no shock in those eyes, only sympathy and the panic of a secret being exposed. I realized that they all knew that Henry had a child with another woman. Yet they all helped him hide it from me. Just because they knew that I was the most important person in Henry's life. If I found out about this, I would definitely leave him, and he would surely go crazy. So, in order to make him go completely crazy, I did 3 things. The first thing was that I melted down the wedding ring he had designed for me with his own hands. The second thing was that I saved the video in which Olivia provoked me onto a USB drive. The third thing was that I applied to join a highly confidential scientific research team, and the joining date was on the very day of our 7th wedding anniversary. On that day, I would disappear from him, as if I had evaporated from the world. And he would only receive a parcel I sent him. Inside it, there would be a USB drive, a divorce agreement, and the medical record of my induced abortion. I swallowed the bitter red wine in my mouth and tried hard to look calm. My voice was almost inaudible, but I still asked that question, how many months along is she? Henry seemed to be jolted awake from a dream, and he suddenly crushed the wine glass in his hand. The shards of glass instantly pierced into the flesh of his palm and blood gushed out. But he didn't care at all. Instead, he rushed in front of me in a hurry, hugged me tightly, and his voice was extremely trembling. Ava, it's not what you think. The baby was just an accident. Hearing these words, I felt as if my heart and soul were shattered. Suppressing the soreness in my throat, I said word by word in disbelief, so you really got another woman pregnant? Henry remained silent and didn't give me an answer. I closed my eyes, and 2 tears rolled down from the corners of my eyes. Thinking that he had also hugged another woman like this, I pushed him away in disgust and turned to flee. Henry chased me to the door. Just then, his phone rang. When he saw the caller ID, he immediately picked it up. I heard a soft and delicate female voice on the other end of the line. General Manager Henry, your little baby has been kicking your big baby. It's driving me crazy. My heart suddenly ached. And I quickened my pace to run away. The person behind didn't catch up. I smiled bitterly, not knowing whether to feel relieved or disappointed. I took out my phone and made an international long-distance call. Professor, I agree to join the AMP scientific research team. A person on the other end of the phone seemed a bit surprised. Really? That's great. Our team really needs someone with your abilities. However, this research team has a very high level of confidentiality. Once you join, your family won't be able to contact you. Your husband cares about you so much that he would call the police if you disappeared for even a second. Does he agree to your joining? My eyes dimmed, and I said in a hoarse voice, I'm going to divorce him. The other end of the phone was silent for a moment, and didn't ask any more questions. They just said, okay, I'll help you go through the procedures. You can join the team in 3 days. The moment the call ended, on the large screen of the shopping mall behind me, an exclusive interview with Henry started to play. The host was very perceptive and noticed his little gesture. She smiled and asked, General Manager Henry, I've noticed that you've been touching your ring all the time. But it seems to be just an ordinary silver ring. Is there anything special about it? Henry smiled gently and raised his hand to show it to her. This is my wedding ring. Sorry, I thought that with your current wealth, your wedding ring must be a large carat diamond ring. Henry said, I made this wedding ring myself 7 years ago. I polished it bit by bit and even engraved mine and my wife's names on the inner ring. Wow, there are really 2 strings of letters, which are FWJ and... Henry said, MSCT. My wife's name is Ava. Wow, I really envy your wife. I guess she must have saved the Milky Way in her previous life to be able to marry you, General Manager Henry. Henry smiled tenderly and just said, actually, it was me who saved the Milky Way in my previous life to be able to marry her. This year is the 7th year of my marriage to my wife. 7 years ago, when I had nothing, she firmly supported me. She even lost our first child while trying to save me. Ava is the only love of my life. I will hold a once-in-a-lifetime wedding for her 3 days later, on our 7th wedding anniversary, so that everyone can witness my love for her. Among the passers-by around, almost all the voices were filled with envy, praising him as a wife-spoiling maniac. Yes, everyone thought that Henry loved me more than his own life. Even I, before today, thought the same way. Looking at the wedding ring that I had worn for 7 years, and that Henry had never allowed me to take off, I walked into a jewelry processing store. Please help me melt down this ring. Thank you. The clerk looked at the ring in surprise and then at me in amazement. She hesitated and asked, "Excuse me. Are you Ava?" Another clerk rolled her eyes at her and disagreed. "Come on, it's just that the silver ring also happens to be engraved with FWJ and SCT. General Manager Henry loves his wife so much. How could his wife possibly want to melt down the ring?" Hearing their conversation, I smiled self-deprecating lie. After paying, I left quietly. I walked aimlessly and suddenly saw Henry's car by the roadside. The car was parked there quietly, as if it was waiting for something. Standing in the cold wind and looking at the car, my heart was filled with mixed feelings. My steps involuntarily slowed down, and a complex emotion welled up in my heart. I hated myself for still having some expectations in my heart. What was I expecting? Was I expecting that he had parked here waiting for me? I didn't know whether to face him or continue to run away. I took a deep breath and slowly walked towards the car. Every step felt like it was stepping on my heart. Suddenly, he got out of the car and quickly walked to the passenger side to open the door. A young girl, caressing her belly, was carefully helped out of the car by him. The girl playfully kissed him on the face and raised her left hand to admire it. I saw that on the ring finger of her left hand. She was wearing a silver ring. "General Manager Henry, the ring you made with your own hands is really beautiful. If the baby knew how much his father loves his mother, he would also be looking forward to coming into this world, right?" Henry doted on her and took off his coat to drape over her. Then he bent down and gently stroked the girl's protruding belly. "Daddy is also looking forward to having him by my side soon." Looking at this scene in front of me, I smiled. But as I smiled, tears streamed down my face. In the 7 years we were in love, Henry always kept a distance of 3 meters from women other than me. For a while, others thought he had gynophobia. He didn't care and just said that this was the sense of propriety that a married man should have towards the opposite sex. Later, he even bought a book called Male Virtue Criteria and studied it every day. I laughed at him for being naive, and he just said that he wanted to give me a full sense of security. He said that his love was only for me. But now he had divided his love and given a part of it to the woman who was pregnant with his child. I watched quietly until Henry felt my burning gaze. And our eyes met. He immediately straightened up, and the girl he was holding suddenly seemed like a hot potato in his arms. Henry let go of the hand around the woman's waist and rushed straight towards me. He nervously held my face in both hands, and then took my hand, his face full of heartache. "Ava, why are you so cold? Why are you crying? Don't scare me." The concern in his eyes was absolutely genuine, and for a moment, I felt a twinge of soft-heartedness. But the girl behind him with a huge pregnant belly was constantly reminding me that his concern was just a joke. The girl was not afraid at all. She held up her pregnant belly with one hand and gently stroked it with the other. She proudly raised her head and stared straight at me. I shook off Henry's hand, took 2 steps back, and as if using up my last breath, I asked him weakly, "Who is she? Is the child in her belly yours?" At this moment, I staked the 7 years we had spent together and all my courage on this one moment. It was a moment of desperation. As long as he denied it, as long as he said with his own mouth that the child wasn't his, I was willing to believe him and willing to forget all this pain and betrayal. However, the low, clear sobbing sound of the girl coming from not far away Like the mockery of fate, shattered my last illusion. A look of guilt flashed in Henry's eyes. He closed his eyes in pain, and when he opened them again, he pursed his lips and said the devastating sentence. "It's mine." I instantly lost my strength and fell heavily to the ground. Because of the support, the palm of my hand scraped the skin. Henry quickly knelt down in front of me, his eyes full of heartache and anxiety. "Ava, you can hit me or scold me, but don't hurt yourself like this." His voice was almost pleading. He held my hands and wiped the wounds for me. Suddenly, he stopped and exclaimed, "Ava, where's the wedding ring on your hand?" I pulled my hand back, sneered, and motioned with my eyes. "Isn't it on her hand? One ring of the same kind is enough." Hearing this, his eyes were flustered, and his mouth opened several times. But he couldn't say anything. Suddenly, he raised his hand and slapped himself twice hard. The force was so great that red and swollen handprints immediately appeared on his cheeks. At this time the girl quickly stepped forward and protected Henry behind her. Her voice was trembling, but there was a hint of determination in it. "Miss Ava. I'm Olivia. Both General Manager Henry and I are victims. Please don't blame him." There were tears in her eyes, but she still tried to protect Henry. Henry's face darkened, and his voice was as cold as ice. "Ava is my wife. You should call her Mrs. Henry." There was an undeniable authority in his words. Olivia's body shrank slightly, and she said firmly, "Mrs. Henry, believe me. I'm only 23 years old. If it weren't for General Manager Henry's mother, I wouldn't have this child at all." As soon as she finished speaking, the absence-minded eyes of Henry suddenly fixed on her, and he blurted out involuntarily, "No." At that moment, I realized that there was no future for us. I didn't ask any more questions. I just let Henry drive me home. In the car, he explained to me the ins and outs of that accident. 9 months ago, when he was on a business trip out of town, he was drugged by his opponent and accidentally entered Olivia's room. After that accident, he gave her a sum of compensation and asked her to disappear from Hai Chang. But he didn't expect that she was actually pregnant. And when his mother learned about this, she brought her back from abroad and was determined to keep the child. I knew very well about my mother-in-law's obsession with having a child. 7 years ago, Henry and I were on our honeymoon on a cruise ship. Suddenly, the cruise ship hit an iceberg and lost its buoyancy instantly. During the process of falling into the sea in order to protect me, Henry was hit by a falling heavy object and broke his leg. He used his last bit of strength to throw the lifebuoy to me and urged me to escape first. But how could I have the heart to leave him behind? I chose to stay. I held him up to prevent him from sinking into the sea. When the rescue team finally arrived, I had been soaked in the icy sea water for a day and a night. Henry recovered soon, but I lost our child in that accident, and since then, the road to having a baby has become extremely difficult for me. From then on, Henry's feelings for me became even deeper. He said that we had shared life and death and swore that no matter what happened, he would never leave me. However, my mother-in-law was extremely dissatisfied with me because I couldn't have children. Now, faced with this unexpected grandson, it's not hard to imagine how strongly she would protect him. In the car, Henry held my hand with great guilt, and his voice was low. "Ava, this was really an accident." I looked straight into his eyes, suppressing the bitterness, and asked him, "The child or me, who do you choose?" He fell silent. But I already got the answer. I pulled my hand back from his tight grip and turned to look out the window at the bustling night view. My relationship with Henry was the same. It had been prosperous for 7 years, and now it was finally coming to an end. When we got home, Henry gently grabbed me. He found the first aid kit and wanted to put medicine on my palm. "Promise me, don't hurt yourself in the future. I'll be heartbroken." I didn't respond to him. I just pulled my hand back, went back to the room, and locked the door. Soon, there was a gentle knock on the door. Henry's coaxing voice came from outside the door, "Ava, please talk to me. Okay? I'm really worried about you." I directly covered my head with the quilt and went to sleep. The next day when I woke up, I was dressed all in black. Looking at the photo of my parents and me on the bedside table, my eyes filled with tears. 5 years ago, I died in a car accident, and today is their Memorial Day. I still remember that day when I watched them being covered with a white cloth and cried uncontrollably. It was Henry who held me and comforted me, saying, "Ava, don't be afraid. You still have me." It was also him who knelt in front of my parents' grave and promised that he would love me for a lifetime, and he would accompany me to pay homage to them every year and let them see how well he took care of me. Suddenly, the door opened, and Henry walked in looking haggard with bloodshot eyes. "Why didn't you come in last night since you have the key?" I said coldly. He squatted down and helped me put on my slippers. "Just consider it as a punishment for me. I'm in good health and it doesn't matter if I don't sleep for one night. If I came in, you wouldn't be able to sleep well either. Put on your slippers so you don't catch a cold." My nose twitched and I blurted out, "Do you remember what day it is today?" Henry looked at me seriously. "Of course. It's the Memorial Day of your parents. How could I forget?" He stood up and actively prepared the things needed for the memorial ceremony. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of a message on my phone placed on the table. After seeing the content of the message clearly, he suddenly stopped, picked up the phone and asked me, "You booked a plane ticket?" My eyebrows didn't move, and I calmly explained, "I originally wanted to go on a trip with you, but I felt that the time wasn't right, so I canceled it." He opened his mouth, wanting to ask something else, but his phone rang. "General Manager Henry." I fell down. And my stomach hurt so much. I seemed to be bleeding too. What should I do? Henry became visibly nervous and completely forgot about the plane ticket. He held my hand and his eyes were full of pleading. "Ava, I'll just go and take a look. I swear I'll be back as soon as possible." He turned around and got into the car, stepped on the gas pedal, and disappeared around the corner. Tears dripped onto the ground. I raised my hand to wipe them away, only to find that the tears just wouldn't stop. I went to the graveyard alone. I stayed there until it was dark and talked to my parents for a whole day. When I got home, I started packing my luggage. In the middle of the night, Henry finally rushed back. He hugged me tightly and kept saying sorry. I let him hold me without saying a word. That night, our world seemed to be divided into two halves. His embrace was warm and familiar, but my heart felt an unprecedented distance from him. The next morning, Henry was no longer by my bedside. There was only a note he left behind. "There's an urgent matter at the company, so I went back first. I made you breakfast. Remember to eat it." He didn't know that early in the morning, just as it was getting light, I heard the call Olivia made to him. It was Olivia who called him away. Looking at the breakfast on the table, I suddenly felt a wave of nausea. A thought popped into my mind, and I took a taxi to the hospital. Looking at the pregnancy test report, I actually laughed with tears in my eyes. The doctor looked at me with sympathetic eyes and asked softly, "Are you a single mother? Do you want to keep the baby? With your constitution? If you have this baby aborted, you won't be able to have children in the future." After leaving the hospital, I took a taxi to the villa that Henry gave me, which was worth 1 billion yuan. Looking at the two Chinese characters Shen Yuan engraved on the big stone in front of the villa, and the line of words written by Henry himself below, holding Ava's hand, "We will stay in love for 100 years. I just felt it was ironic. This was the exclusive love nest that Henry gave me. Besides the servants, no other woman was ever allowed to enter. But at this moment, I saw Olivia appear in front of the villa. She looked at me triumphantly and said provocatively, "The legendary Shen Yuan is just so." I still managed to get in here easily. "I heard this is your love nest, but Henry's mother said this place is the most suitable for raising a baby, so brother Henry let me move in. Aren't you angry?" Afraid that I might bump into something and get hurt, brother Henry even replaced all the furniture. "They're all my favorites." I looked around at the villa that had been completely changed beyond recognition. and the bitterness welling up in my heart almost made me suffocate. Memories came flooding back, clearly emerging in front of my eyes. On our third wedding anniversary, Henry knelt down on one knee and handed me the key to this villa. Ava, I won't let anyone step into this place. This place has the marks of our love and is a world exclusive to the two of us. This place used to be the holy land of our love, but now he had given it to another woman with his own hands. I felt as if all the strength in my body had been drained away, and I could barely stand. Olivia stared at me intently with eyes full of jealousy and hatred. And I could only lean weakly against the door, my heart filled with endless sorrow and despair. This place that used to be full of love had now become a witness to my broken heart. So how long are you still going to hold on to the position of Mrs. Henry? Can't you see how much Brother Henry likes and favors me and the baby? Olivia's words were full of provocation. Hold on to? I smiled bitterly, feeling a sense of powerlessness welling up in my heart. Suddenly, my gaze landed on a corner of the empty living room, where the photos of my parents used to be placed. But now they were nowhere to be seen. Where are the photos of my parents? My voice suddenly rose, trembling, and my eyes were filled with disbelief. Of course Brother Henry threw away those unlucky things. Olivia smiled faintly and said disdainfully, as if she was talking about something insignificant. I glared at her, and then she reluctantly went to get the photos out. Then, right in front of me, the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile, and she lit the photos with a lighter. I rushed forward to put out the fire, and Olivia took the opportunity to sit down on the ground and started shouting in pain. I couldn't hear her shouts clearly. I just focused on putting out the fire. Suddenly, I heard Henry's incredulous roar. Ava, why did you push her? Ignoring the burning pain in my hands from the flames, I put out the fire. When I looked up, I found that Henry didn't even glance at me. Instead, he picked up Olivia in a panic and left. Looking at my hands that were red and sore from the burn, I felt that these 7 years of marriage were really just a joke. After rinsing the burn with cold water, I started to clean up all the mess here. Suddenly, my mother-in-law appeared and slapped me hard. You're a jinx who can't have children. If anything happens to my grandson, I won't let you off. Henry, who had come back, quickly came over to stop her. Finally he rushed towards me, grabbed my hands, and applied ointment to them with a look of heartache. When Henry saw that my mother-in-law was about to make more trouble, he said, "She's about to give birth over there." My mother-in-law left immediately. After everyone left, Henry carefully observed my expression and finally said tentatively, Ava, Olivia is young. Even if she made you unhappy, you shouldn't have pushed her. I pushed her? My voice was full of disbelief. It's okay, it's okay. I apologized to her on your behalf. And she won't hold it against you. With just one sentence, he convicted me. A wave of tiredness and powerlessness washed over me, and I didn't want to explain anymore. Henry had already chosen to believe Olivia over me. 7 years of marriage meant less to him than a new lover he had known for less than a year. Looking at Henry carefully blowing on my wound but obviously distracted, and thinking of the flash of joy in his eyes when he said that she was giving birth just now, I touched my belly. He had already made the decision for me about whether to keep the baby or not. In the end, Henry still went to the hospital. I took a taxi home and packed the luggage I was going to take away tomorrow. I erased all the traces of my life in the villa. I didn't leave him anything related to me except for a wedding photo that I had cut into pieces. I took out a USB drive from my bag and sent it out together with the signed divorce agreement and the abortion surgery form. The receiving address was the auditorium where Henry was going to hold a make-up wedding for me tomorrow. The recipient was Henry. After doing all this, I took out my phone again and edited a text message and sent it out. Don't you want to be Mrs. Henry? I'm giving him in the wedding tomorrow to you. That night, Henry didn't come home all night. This was the first time in 7 years that he didn't come home at night. But he called back from time to time to ask the servant if I had eaten and asked the servant to help me dry my hair. He always remembered that I would always get a headache if I went to bed without drying my hair. Late at night, the servant came to cover me with a quilt, and I happened to wake up at that time. The servant joked, "Sir called and said that you're not honest when you sleep and you always kick the quilt. He insisted that I come and check to make sure you don't catch a cold." She praised how affectionate a couple we were in people's eyes and that we had never quarreled in 7 years. Especially that Henry was going to hold a make-up wedding for me just to make me happy. I didn't respond. I just closed my eyes indifferently. The next day, Henry called and said that the wedding company would come to pick me up, and he would go directly to the wedding venue from the hospital. Henry's call was still connected when the taxi I ordered arrived, and the driver confirmed the last few digits of my phone number with me. Henry heard the sound on my end of the phone and asked in confusion, "Ava, why are you taking a taxi?" "I'm taking a taxi to the venue," I replied flatly and perfunctorily. Hong Ti was silent for a moment and then said seriously, "Ava, the baby is born. But believe me, I really love you the most forever." The exclusive love that used to be his for me had now become just one of many most s. How could he divide his heart into and still pour out his deep affection to me? I hung up the phone and directed the driver to the airport. From now on, I will embrace my new life. At this moment in the hospital, General Manager Henry was filled with unease, as if something precious was quietly slipping away from him. However, he didn't have time to think deeply about it, because the crying of the newborn baby interrupted his thoughts. Facing his son, a trace of joy flashed through his heart, but he didn't reach out to hug him. He was afraid that if the smell of the baby clung to him, it would make Ava unhappy. At 12 noon, the wedding venue was already filled with people. Henry waited on the stage, his face beaming with a smile. Amid the master of ceremonies' respectful welcome, the doors of the hall opened. The bride, dressed in a snow-white wedding dress, slowly walked towards the stage to the sound of the wedding march. But when the bride raised her head, the smile on Henry's face froze instantly. The bride wasn't me, it was Olivia. In her arms, she was holding their newly born child. The murmur of the people around suddenly grew louder. His expression changed abruptly. He grabbed Olivia's hand urgently and asked, "Why are you here? Where's Ava?" Olivia was frightened by the anger on his face. Her eyes turned red, and she struggled in pain, saying, "I don't know. She told me to come in a wedding dress today." Just as he was about to ask something, a male voice came from the entrance of the hall. "Who is Henry? Ava sent you a parcel." On the other side, the moment I stepped onto the plane, I pulled all the contacts related to Henry into the blacklist. I also deleted all the moments in the social media circle that carried the memories of our love and all the photos of the two of us. Ignoring Olivia, who was still weak after giving birth, Henry threw her aside and quickly took the parcel. When he saw that the sender was Ava, the heart that Henry had raised to his throat settled down a little. When he opened the parcel and saw the pregnancy test form inside, excitement flashed in his eyes. Ava was actually pregnant with their child. But when he saw the subsequent abortion surgery form and the signed divorce agreement, he lost his composure and slumped to the ground. Henry's mother quickly stepped forward to check. When she saw the abortion surgery form, she scolded. That jinx actually dared to abort the bloodline of our Henry family, but luckily, I still have a precious grandson. When she saw the divorce agreement, a smug smile spread across her face. Divorce is good. That jinx has finally left. Henry's eyes were blank. And he murmured to himself, "It can't be, it can't be." He firmly believed that Ava's love for him was deep and reckless, and she couldn't possibly leave him like this. He tried to stay calm and frowned, asking his mother to stop this farce. "Mom, today is the big day of my make-up wedding with Ava. Don't make trouble here." There was a hint of urgency in his voice. "Ava will come out soon. You'd better leave quickly. Don't let her see you and ruin her mood." His face was gloomy, and he ordered his special assistant to quickly take his mother and the child away from the scene. Then, he adjusted his expression and explained to the guests below, "This is a child from my relative's family. I specially brought him here to be the flower boy today. The guests below looked at the child in Henry's mother's arms with strange expressions, saying, "What flower boy? This is clearly a baby who was just born not long ago." Henry's mother pursed her lips in dissatisfaction, threw the divorce agreement in her hand aside, shook off the special assistant's hand, and rushed onto the stage again. "Henry, wake up, this is your own son." Her voice was sharp and urgent. "Don't be blinded by that vixen Ava. She has already signed the divorce agreement. And she won't come back." Henry still didn't want to believe it. He picked up the divorce agreement and angrily tore it into pieces. "That can't be, Mom. Ava just has a misunderstanding. She must still be at home waiting for me to go back and explain to her." Henry's mother stopped him and said with anger and dissatisfaction in her voice, "What misunderstanding? Ava is just jealous. She's a hen that can't lay eggs. She monopolizes you all by herself and is too narrow-minded to tolerate this child." The guests below started whispering to each other, imagining the inside story of this family farce. Their words were full of sarcasm and doubt, and these whispers pierced Henry's eardrums like fine needles. Didn't Mrs. Henry lose her fertility because she saved General Manager Henry? Didn't General Manager Henry swear in public that he would never have children in his life? A guest said in a low voice. TSK. Which successful man would really not want children? Another guest shook his head, his tone full of disdain. Those deep affections before seemed to be all fake now, right? Someone else joined the discussion, their voice full of contempt. As these words spread, the guests began to imagine all kinds of so-called truths. Their expressions changed from initial surprise to disappointment, and finally to indifference. They left the wedding venue one after another, and the originally lively atmosphere cooled down quickly. Soon, only the crying of the child echoed in the empty hall of the wedding venue. A female guest specifically walked up to Henry. Her eyes were full of sarcasm and disdain. "Loving his wife? What a joke. General Manager Henry, you are extremely hypocritical." Her words were sharp and harsh. Mrs. Henry, oh no dame, really decisive. Having lost such a good wife like Ava. General Manager Henry, you're going to spend the rest of your life in regret. Her words were like a sharp blade, stabbing straight into Henry's heart. Henry felt a sharp pain in his heart. He quickly took out his phone and called the servant at home, his voice trembling. "Sir, Madam left early in the morning and hasn't come back." The servant's voice came from the other end of the phone, and her emotions couldn't be heard. Henry's hand dropped weakly, and the phone slipped to the ground. His vision blurred, and his heart was filled with endless regret and pain. He recalled Ava's former tenderness and the wonderful times they had spent together. Those vows had now all turned into bubbles. He realized that he might have really lost Ava, the woman who had once been willing to give everything for him. The lights at the wedding venue grew dim, and the crying of the child became even more desolate. Henry stood there, lonely and helpless. His world seemed to collapse completely at this moment. Henry rushed home in a hurry. His heart ached as if cut by a knife, and he stumbled through the empty rooms, calling out his lover's name. "Ava, where are you? I was wrong. I shouldn't have had another woman. You're the only one in my heart." His voice was full of regret and despair. "You can hit me, you can scold me, but don't scare me like this. Please don't leave me." His voice trembled, almost pleading. "I can't live without you, Ava." He repeated his words of admitting his mistake over and over again until his voice became hoarse. However, the person who should have heard these words was no longer in his sight. He pushed open the door of the bedroom, and what greeted his eyes was a floor full of fragments. Those were the wedding photos of him and Ava from each year, the witness of their love, but now they had all become irreparable fragments. Just like their relationship. Because of the appearance of Olivia and the child, there was an irreparable rift. Henry felt as if a piece of his heart had been torn out alive, and the pain almost made him suffocate. No, Ava was just angry. He had to find her and kneel down to beg her to come back to him. He knelt on the ground and dialed Ava's phone number. But he only got the mechanical prompt tone that the other party's phone was turned off. He then dialed the phone number of their mutual friend, his voice full of urgency and helplessness. "Have you seen Ava? Has she contacted you? She's gone. Is she really gone?" His words were filled with panic. He was afraid of losing Ava and afraid of losing this family. His friend was silent for a moment on the other end of the phone, and then said softly, "Henry, we don't know where she went either. But you know Ava. Once she makes up her mind, it's very hard to change." An endless sense of self-blame and pain welled up in Henry's heart. He knelt on the ground, covering his face with both hands, and tears slipped through his fingers. He knew that he had to find Ava. No matter what the cost, he had to let her know that he really knew he was wrong and that he really couldn't live without her. He wanted to make up for his past mistakes and save their love. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, he wouldn't give up. On the other end of the phone, his friend's voice was filled with helplessness and self-blame. "Henry, Ava really didn't contact us. I just found out that she not only quit our group chat, but also deleted all of us. Sigh. If we had known she would be so resolute, we shouldn't have helped you hide it in the first place. Now we've lost a good friend like Ava." His friend's words were full of regret. Henry's heart tightened suddenly. Yes, Ava had always been so decisive. When her best friend betrayed her, Ava didn't shed a single tear and didn't hesitate to break off the friendship. He recalled the serious expression on Ava's face when he proposed to her. "Henry, I trust you this time." Her voice was firm and clear. "In the future, if you betray me, I will never forgive you, and I will leave you completely." At that time, he was full of confidence and vowed that he would never betray her and would never make her sad. Now during this period, how many things had he done to make her sad? He punched the wall hard with his fist, not caring even when his hand was bleeding. The pain might help him ease the guilt and pain in his heart a little. He recalled every smile, every hug, and every gentle word from Ava. Those moments that had once made him feel extremely happy now had become the deepest pain in his heart. He realized that he had not only betrayed Ava's trust but also destroyed the most precious thing between them, love. He knelt on the ground, his vision blurred by tears. He knew that he had to find Ava, apologize to her, and express his regret. He finally understood that without Ava, his life would be meaningless. At this moment, the servant tiptoed in, her voice a little cautious. "Sir, the USB drive you dropped is here." "That's right." Ava left the USB drive. "She must have wanted to tell me how to get her forgiveness through this." Henry seemed to have grasped at a straw of hope and quickly inserted the USB drive into the computer. The video played, and scenes of Olivia provoking and framing me in Shenyuan were shown one by one. It turned out that all of this was a conspiracy directed and performed by Olivia herself, and he had actually misunderstood Ava because of this. Henry felt as if all the strength in his body had been drained, and he slumped to the ground. He locked himself in the room and hugged Ava's pillow tightly, trying to draw in the lingering scent of her, as if he could feel her presence this way. His heart was filled with self-blame and regret, and he couldn't forgive himself for his blindness and stupidity. How he wished he could turn back time and have the opportunity to correct his mistakes and win back Ava's heart. His voice hoarse, he gave an order to his special assistant on the phone. "Do whatever it takes to find out Ava's whereabouts." But it took him 5 years. No matter how much manpower and material resources he spent, he didn't get even a bit of news about Ava. Ava seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. When I stepped into the house, my 5-year-old son, Lucas, stumbled towards me, and my heart instantly softened. His little hand clung tightly to the hem of my clothes, and his eyes were filled with dependence and love for his mother. 5 years ago, when Henry abandoned me and went to wait for Olivia who was giving birth, I did think about having the baby aborted. I had even made an appointment for the abortion surgery. But when I stood at the door of the operating room holding the consent form for the abortion surgery, the baby kicked my belly suddenly. At that moment, maternal love overcame all the sadness. In the end, I decided to give birth to the child. Today, the professor told me that the scientific research team now has an excellent opportunity to explore new species. I was very excited. This opportunity was very precious to me. If I could seize it, it would be a huge leap forward in my career. However, my gaze involuntarily fell on Lucas, and a trace of hesitation welled up in my heart. The tutor seemed to see my dilemma. She gently picked up Lucas and said in a serious and firm tone, "Teacher knows that you are a very smart and hardworking girl, self-reliant, progressive, and with career aspirations. So when you marry Henry and decided to give up scientific research and return to the family to be his good wife, I didn't quite agree. At that time, you had a deep relationship. Seeing you happy, I didn't have the heart to say anything that might affect your relationship." She continued. "Now, Lucas is already 5 years old and doesn't need his mother to be by his side all the time. I've retired and have a lot of time, so I can help you take care of him." There was encouragement in the tutor's eyes. "Ava, you once gave up your own development for your husband. Are you going to give up again because of your son now?" Her words touched my heart deeply. "Your life can be more brilliant." The tutor's words were like a guiding light, illuminating the confusion in my heart. With tears in my eyes, I nodded firmly and hugged my tutor and son tightly. At this moment, I understood that I could be a good mother and also an excellent scientific researcher. My life shouldn't be just about sacrifice. It should also have the courage to pursue and realize my self-worth. With the successful completion of the scientific research team's exploration, a year had passed quietly. In this year, with my outstanding achievements and an innovative scientific research result, I successfully joined the top national scientific research center in the country, took over the professor's mantle, and continued her unfinished scientific research career. The tutor was extremely proud of my achievements. She happily invited me home, saying that she wanted to celebrate for me. However, at the airport, I unexpectedly met Henry again. His hair had turned gray, and he was very noticeable in the crowd. The once powerful general manager Henry in the business world now looked extremely haggard. The moment his eyes fell on me, it was as if a ray of hope had been ignited in them. "Ava," he called my name, his voice filled with eagerness and longing. My heart was as calm as water, and I was indifferent to his call. He tried to break through the crowd surrounding us and run towards me, but the people protecting me firmly blocked him 3 meters away. His voice was low and hoarse, and his posture was humble. "Ava, I just want to say a few words to you. Don't leave." When he saw that I was about to leave, he actually knelt down in full view of everyone. "Ava, please, don't leave me." His words were filled with despair, and tears streamed down his face. Passers-by began to talk among themselves. Some people advised me, "Girl, just talk to him." Some people guessed, "Maybe there's some misunderstanding. It'll be fine if you make it clear." Others sighed, "A man's knees are as precious as gold. He's already knelt down to admit his mistake. What else can't be forgiven?" But I didn't soften my heart, nor did I look back. I directly left the scene quickly through the secret passage. My life has turned a new page, and Henry has become a part of the past. I deeply understand that this year of study and growth has made me stronger and more independent. I'm no longer the woman who relied on others and gave up her dreams for love. I have my own dreams, goals to strive for, and a stage of my own. I'm no longer Henry's wife. I am Ava, an independent, confident, and capable woman. At the Scientific Research Center, I will continue my research and contribute my strength to the progress of science. I will use my knowledge and wisdom to solve more scientific problems and create more scientific and technological achievements. I will use my actions to prove the strength of women and inspire more women to pursue their dreams. Henry's kneeling down no longer holds any meaning for me. I no longer need his apology, nor do I need his forgiveness. What I need is to keep moving forward and realize my value. At the professor's birthday banquet, as soon as my former mother-in-law saw my son Lucas, an uncontrollable joy immediately appeared on her face. She still knew how to maintain some sense of propriety and didn't cause a scene at the banquet. However, as soon as the birthday banquet ended, she rushed to the entrance of the hotel in a hurry. Ava. This child is Henry's. There was a hint of eagerness and certainty in her voice. I frowned slightly, already prepared in my heart. When I decided to bring Lucas back to the country to attend this birthday banquet, I knew that Lucas's background might be revealed. But I will never let the Henry family take my child away from me. Henry's mother, this is my child. My voice was calm and firm. You already have a grandson. You'd better go home and take good care of him. There was no room for negotiation in my words. My former mother-in-law's face turned pale instantly. Her eyes stared intently at Lucas as if she wanted to see some shadows of the past through him. This is Henry's child. This is the child of our Henry family. He looks exactly like Henry when he was a child. The onlookers around heard this and began to whisper. Henry's mother is also pitiful. The previous eldest grandson wasn't actually her son's biological child at all. That's right. She even helped that woman drive away her good daughter-in-law. Now she's really come to nothing. I held Lucas's hand tightly, feeling the warmth coming from his small palm, and my heart was filled with determination. No matter what happened in the past, Lucas is my son. I will do everything I can to protect him and give him a warm home. The right and wrong of the Henry family have long been none of our business. We have our own lives and our own happiness, which is what we really need to focus on. Saying this, the friends who attended the birthday banquet hurried forward, trying to ease the awkward atmosphere. They knew that this unexpected confrontation might bring in pleasant memories to the professor's birthday banquet. So they tried their best to persuade my former mother-in-law to leave and also protected me and Lucas from being disturbed. And someone approached me and whispered an astonishing secret: Olivia's child was not Henry's biological child. It turned out that after I left, Henry made it clear that he didn't want children. Olivia mistakenly thought that as long as she gave birth to a child, she could secure her position in the Henry family. So she forced my former mother-in-law to assist her in rising to power. Facing Olivia's coercion, Henry firmly threatened to sever the mother-son relationship. Only then did my former mother-in-law have to stop. However, when Olivia realized that she couldn't get any benefits from the Henry family, she started a live broadcast regardless of everything, trying to force the Henry family to accept her through public pressure. But she didn't expect that Henry had already secretly done a paternity test. The truth was revealed. The so-called accident during that business trip was actually the result of Olivia deliberately going to Henry's room. At that time, she was even still in a relationship with her ex-boyfriend. After getting pregnant, she herself wasn't sure who the father of the child was, so she shifted the blame to Henry. When the truth came to light, Olivia was not only severely beaten by my former mother-in-law, but also kicked out of the hospital along with her child. Her ex-boyfriend also refused to acknowledge the child. With nowhere to go, Olivia had to slink back to her hometown. All of this made the people present sigh with emotion. Olivia's schemes and calculations eventually only led to the outcome of being deserted by everyone. For Henry, although this turmoil made him see clearly the complexity of human nature, it also made him cherish more those who accompanied him sincerely. For me, these past entanglements only strengthened my determination to follow my own path. My former mother-in-law stood in the crowd, listening to the people's discussions about her family's private affairs. The expression on her face was both awkward and angry. When she saw that I was going to leave with my son, regardless of scolding others, she hurriedly came forward with a pleading look on her face. Ava, I was wrong before. It's all my fault for being blind and being deceived by that woman Olivia. Don't take it to heart. There was a hint of trembling in her voice, obviously showing sincere regret. The child is already so big. You should remarry Henry. I promise I'll treat you like my own daughter from now on. She was almost begging, hoping to salvage something. I just sneered. The anger and disappointment in my heart had long turned into firm resolve. My child doesn't have a father, only a mother. There was no room for maneuver in my words. My friend stood by my side, wanting to protect me and my son on leave, but was at a loss because of my former mother-in-law's unreasonable behavior. The situation became more and more chaotic. Just then, Henry rushed over in a hurry. "Mom! Stop making a scene." There was a hint of sternness in his voice. He pulled his mother away, preventing her from continuing this farce. His gaze shifted back and forth between me and my son. The sense of dejection on him seemed to disappear completely, as if he had found a new meaning in life. There was an uncontrollable excitement and eagerness in his voice. "Ava, take the child and leave quickly. I will never let my mom disturb your life." His words were filled with promises and determination. Obviously, he truly wanted to protect us and no longer let us be hurt in any way. After the farce subsided, my son and I stayed in the hotel room. Lucas leaned close to me with his soft little body, and there was a hint of worry in his voice. "Mom, are you not happy?" I hugged him tightly, feeling his warmth and dependence. "Lucas, do you want a father?" I asked softly, my heart full of complexity and hesitation. "I only want Mom. Whatever Mom likes, Lucas likes, whatever Mom doesn't like, Lucas doesn't want." Lucas's answer was simple and innocent, but it deeply touched my heart. I was so touched that tears welled up in my eyes. I held my son tightly and burst into tears. All my strength crumbled into tears at that moment. After that, I contacted Henry, hoping to have a good talk with him. He arrived as promised, holding my favorite small orchids and tang hulu in his hands. "I thought you might not be able to taste the authentic tang hulu abroad, so I brought it for you." His tone was full of concern, and his posture was very humble as he tried to make up for his past mistakes in this way. But my heart had become resolute, and I was no longer swayed by his tenderness. "Ava, can't you really give me another chance for the sake of our child?" There was a trace of pleading in his voice, and his eyes were filled with anticipation. "I swear, I will treat you well. I really know I was wrong. After losing you, I've been living in pain every day." His words were full of regret, as if he wanted to exchange such a promise for my forgiveness. However, I calmly took out my phone and played a recording. The words my son said yesterday echoed clearly in the room. When Henry heard them, he was struck like by lightning. The expression on his face changed from anticipation to shock, and then to deep pain. He finally understood that some wounds couldn't be mended with words, and some opportunities, once missed, could never be regained. My eyes were as cold as ice, and the words I said were like a heavy hammer pounding on his heart. "Why should I turn back just because you've repented? You betrayed me and brought me endless pain. You deserve to spend the rest of your life in regret and pain. It's all your own doing." There was no warmth in my words, only a resolute attitude towards the past. Henry suddenly knelt down on the ground, crawled a few steps on his knees, and hugged my legs tightly, crying bitterly. "But I was framed. Ava, I'm innocent. Someone drugged me, and it was Olivia's doing on purpose." I looked at his remorseful face coldly and sneered. "Are you really innocent?" I retorted. During a company team building activity not long after our marriage, Henry was also drugged. A woman entered the room while I was away and pretended to be me. But he was able to accurately recognize that she wasn't me and drove her out. After 7 years of living together, we were already so familiar with each other's aura that it was ingrained in our bones. In Olivia's case, how could he not have recognized the truth? It was just that the long-term married life had become like a stagnant pool of water. On the track of that dull life, he had the thought of cheating. When a fresh young girl came to him on her own initiative, he took the opportunity. Then he pretended to be framed by others as an accident and acted extremely affectionate. Everyone believed him, and even he himself believed it. After hearing my words, Henry was like a deflated balloon, looking dejected. I looked at him and said coldly and soberly, "Henry, you're really disgusting." He seemed to have had his darkest side exposed, losing all his vitality and looking at me in despair. "I'm sorry, Ava. I'm really sorry. His voice was filled with powerlessness and despair. I didn't say anything more and got up to leave. I won't waste a single moment on someone who isn't worthy. In the future, my son and I have a more wonderful life waiting for us. We will move towards a more colorful future.